Hi everyone and welcome back to the Theme Park Jack YouTube channel. It's been a while, sorry about that, but today I'm back and I've got lots of cool videos planned over the coming week, so please drop me a sub if you haven't already and let's get straight into the video. I was really lucky to go to Disneyland Paris recently for the first time since I was about 2 years old, so it was so cool to get back there, and it was obviously my first time going on most of the rides there, and one of those was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Péril. Now, I've heard a lot about this, most of them actually not really very good things bar the theming, so I was really interested to go on it and try it myself. When I go on roller coasters for the first time, I always try to go in with a really open mind. Rides sometimes can be really overhyped and sometimes have so much negativity thrown about them that it's just unfair really. So I always just try and go in really neutral and then I can just give it an honest review, and I'll never come off a ride disappointed because I didn't know what to expect going in. So that's the attitude that I took with this, and to be honest I actually really enjoyed it, but it is actually quite rough in some areas. So I'm going to go through all of that today and we'll start out with the layout first. Since this ride opened in 1993, it has really old trains with quite bulky over-the-shoulder restraints on them. The big problem with the trains for me is that you're sitting on a bench and not into a bucket seat like you are on new roller coasters, so there isn't really any room to move around based on the different features of the ride, and this can actually make it very uncomfortable, especially if you are tall, because you are pushed right up against the restraint. In terms of where to sit in the train, I would definitely try to get at the front if you possibly can, because further back your view is definitely impacted. With the rows being so tall and close together, it means that you can only really see out to the sides if you are further back, and since the airtime on this ride isn't really amazing at any point, and it's perfectly intense enough at the front as it already is, I would try and get there if you possibly can do. So, once you've pulled down your over-the-shoulder restraint, you'll take a right turn out and you'll actually probably stop there for a few seconds. Since the staff at Disneyland Paris are so efficient at getting the trains out, it very often means that they have to hold you there for a few seconds until the lift hill's cleared. That's actually not a bad thing though, because it's right in front of the waiting area, so if you've got family and friends waiting off the ride, it's a perfect opportunity for them to get a picture, and as well there's lots of scenery around to look at. I usually prefer it when lift hills are really smooth and quick, but this one being quite clunky and old, I actually really like because it adds to the minecart feel of the ride. It also gives you the perfect opportunity to take a look over to the right of you and look at some of the scenery. The temple that this ride is built around is absolutely incredible. It's stunning and very Instagrammable, which is what I've done. Give me a follow at Theme Park Jack if you haven't already. Just thought I'd quickly squeeze that one in there. But yeah, the lift hill is really cool, I quite like it and it totally adds to the effect of the ride. Once you get to the top of the lift hill, you'll bank to the right and go past one of the main pieces of the temple, which again is just so cool and you get an even better view here. You'll then take a small dip down, and I'm not actually going to call this a drop because I don't think it is one, and I think it does a disservice to the actual drop later on in the ride. But that dip's absolutely fine, but what comes after that, unfortunately, is probably my least favourite part of the ride, and that's this big jolt. Just the way that the track is profiled at this point coming out of that dip, it jolts so hard on your shoulders with the restraint pushing up right against you, which is really annoying, and I'd say that that is probably one of the only downsides of the ride, because it's not rough as such, it's more just jolty in areas like that. It's not too bad, don't get me wrong, and it doesn't really hurt, it's just uncomfortable for a few seconds. After this you'll take another dip, which is the part that you'll see while you're queuing up. It's the main part of the ride that you can actually see while you're in the queue, so I think it is mainly for their benefit, but nevertheless you'll do that, and there's nothing really special about this, no airtime, no force or anything like that, it's just adding to the ride as it's building up, and it's just a perfect opportunity to take in the theming, to be honest. When you come out of that dip, there's no jolt on this one, luckily, and you then bank round to the left and build up towards a main drop and loop on the ride. Usually, I'm really not a fan of large sections of straight track because it's just a bit unnecessary and boring. Usually you go on a roller coaster for lots of different elements on there, so it's not exactly ideal when it's just straight, boring track. But this one's a bit different though, because it's building up to the drop and the loop with it right in front of you, so I actually don't mind it in this instance. You'll take a very sharp bend down to the left, and this is actually really intense. You feel the forces big time on this, and then you go into a vertical loop. The loop is actually really tight and it speeds around the whole thing, which means that the forces on it are absolutely incredible. I actually grayed out on this, and the other people with me did too. It was really, really forceful, and I'd argue that that's probably the best moment of the ride. I loved it. And it's crazy actually that that was the first ever inversion on a roller coaster in a Disney park. So yeah, they started out with a really intense one, and I'm a huge fan. Sometimes on roller coasters you get elements of the ride that would be really lackluster if it wasn't for theming, and what comes after the loop is exactly that, with a really cool pop-up into a helix that gives some airtime and is a bit of a head chopper moment actually, really cool. The helix that follows is really intense as well, and you go around it really fast, and you obviously go down as well. I always prefer helixes when they're downwards because you usually find that the force on them is much better, and I like how the speed builds up even more as you go through it before you come out at the end, and then you go into a mid-course brake run. Now I know what people think about mid-courses. Usually they're not exactly great because you just slow the ride to a complete stop and they're quite boring. But with this, it does nothing more than just a quick tug at the side of the train to slow it down just a bit, and you actually get another pop of airtime as you go up into that too, so no complaints here. After the mid-course, you have a quick dip down again to the side, a small floater airtime hill that doesn't really do anything special, but it's not a bad element. I prefer it to nothing being there, and then you just take a turn and head into the final brake run. Honestly, I was really impressed with this coaster. Knowing that this is actually a near clone of many of the Pinfari looping coasters that you see at a lot of fairgrounds and temporary amusement parks, and while I have never been on one of them, they have an absolutely shocking reputation among coaster enthusiasts. Apparently they are absolutely terrible, and I can well imagine from what I've seen of them. So knowing that this coaster is a near clone of one of them, I was a bit doubtful as to how good this was going to be, and I was expecting it to be mainly carried by the theming. While the theming definitely does help, I actually think the roller coaster is really good too, and that's why I'm going to give this ride a 7 out of 10. It's absolutely nothing special, the roller coaster on its own, and at most theme parks the roller coaster on its own would usually just fit in as kind of like a filler roller coaster really. But it is made into a top tier ride at Disneyland Paris by the incredible theming. So it's good as it is, and the theming makes it even better. I do wish that they had some more theming specific to Indiana Jones and not just a temple and artifacts around that, because it did feel like if it didn't have the Indiana Jones name attached to it, you wouldn't really have any idea that this was linked to the movie in any way. So that's just one thing. There's so much to look at in the queue line, and to be honest, you don't spend very long in the queue at all because it is constantly moving. The operations there are just so quick that actually at times I wished it moved a bit slower so I had time to get my camera out and take some pictures, but there's no complaints here, and I was very impressed by a ride that I expected to be a one and done to one that I was actually quite impressed with. It's not the best ride at Disneyland Paris, it's definitely not the best ride in Disneyland Park either. That definitely goes to Hyperspace Mountain, and I think I would take Big Thunder Mountain over this too. But you know what? It's not bad at all. So don't believe all the haters on this coaster. I actually thought it was quite good fun. Thank you very much for watching today's video. I promise I'm back with lots more videos to come now. So thank you for hanging in there, and thank you to all the new subscribers. And I'll see you in the next video, which will be out very soon.